In yesterday's episode, we talked about some dynasty sleepers that I think will have a good chance to be ranked a good bit higher at this time next season because either the situation's really good or I just think, hey, this is the year that they are able to put the pieces together for one reason or another. Except for Jonathan Mobo, who I acknowledge is probably actually better for this list. But since we talked about him yesterday, we won't talk about him today when we talk about dynasty stashes. These are players that may not give you a ton of production this season for one reason or another. And we'll specify those reasons when we talk about the individual. But I think long term that there's for some of them, I feel really confident that they're going to be very good. And probably everybody in your league knows it too. It's just going to take some time. And we want to talk about those guys, but also maybe some players that are going a bit under the radar in your league that would make sense for you to stash them. Now, typically dynasty leagues should roster at least 300 players. I think most of mine roster more, maybe at least 350, if not more. But I know there are dynasty leagues that maybe just roster 150 or roster 200 to 250, and that's okay. It's not how I would play, but there is a way to play it. So some of these players may not make sense to stash in your league because frankly, let's see, there's probably not a good reason to stash Jordan Walsh if you're rostering 150 players in your league. That's okay. There's just not roster space, and that's fine. But if you're in a 30 team league and you're rostering almost 400 players, then okay, yeah, maybe Thomas Sorber isn't really a stash because, well, he is, but you're not going to get him at value because, or for good value because everyone in your league knows that. It's a very competitive league and you're not going to be able to get him at a discount. Every league's different, but I want to make sure to talk about all levels of leagues and based on size or competition level. So we're going to talk about, I have 12 dynasty stashes today. I know we had 6 sleepers yesterday, so there's more to talk about, but we'll probably spend less time with each player, which is okay. That's just the way we're going to do it. Before I do that, I just wanted to remind you guys that BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your sports betting action. With baseball season in full swing and football season around the corner, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, and even live in-game betting. From MLB to UFC to tennis and NFL futures, BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering info. And in between the games, you can head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and a live casino. Head to the website today and take advantage of their industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses and weekly cash boosts. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, the first player I want to talk about, and the first 3 will be rookies. The rest of them will not be. So this isn't just going to be me saying, yes, stash a bunch of rookies because they're not going to be good in year one. This is stash these rookies because they're long-term projects, or maybe they're not going to be very good in year one, frankly. And then it'll be 9 non-rookies. So trust me, we're not just going to talk about rookies more, but we have to mention a few of them, specifically Kaspersky Yakuchonis, as me the first guy we talk about, who was drafted 20th overall by the Heat. Last year, Illinois averaged 15 points, 5.7 rebounds, 4.7 assists per game. We saw him during Summer League. We saw him at his worst. We saw him at his best. There's definitely a fun offensive game here. But how does it fit in Miami? We've talked about this a number of times. So this isn't anything new if you listen to the show. Davion Mitchell is there, but they also added Norm Powell, still have Tyler Hero. Does a backcourt of Tyler Hero and Norm Powell work very well? Maybe not on defense. But both those guys are going to need their minutes. Would assume that Norm Powell starts, but I suppose there's a scenario where he doesn't and comes off the bench, and either way is going to be ahead of Yakuchonis in the rotation. And Davion Mitchell's play style is more unique in this backcourt in the sense that he was pretty good with the ball in his hands with the Heat last year towards the end of the season, but really he's out there for defense. Whereas Tyler Hero and Norm Powell are out there to score. Yakuchonis is out there to facilitate and score. Not a phenomenal defensive prospect. Also, a young prospect that is going to, he's 19 years old. So he's probably not going to be able to contribute immediately in Miami. We'll see, but I'm not super confident. But that's okay because it's still long term. I do believe that he is a talented player and will eventually be pretty good. Now, this doesn't mean now's the best time to try and trade for him because his value probably is fairly decently high in the sense that we saw him have some nice stretches at Summer League and he still hasn't played an NBA game yet. So maybe in the middle of his rookie year when he's struggling is a good time to trade for him or after an offseason. But definitely a player that if you have, I would recommend just holding on to him, stashing him. Not expecting to get much production out of him this season, but still having the belief that Yakuchonis is going to be a good player in the long run. The next player that we're going to talk about is Thomas Sorber, who was drafted by the Thunder and didn't play in Summer League, and I assume isn't going to play a ton during his rookie year. May see some time in the G League, may see some time in the NBA, but just a limited role. But long term, I'm a huge Thomas Sorber fan, a huge believer in him. And right now, we've talked about this, the Isaiah Hartenstein, Chet Holmgren center rotation where they're playing together, alternating minutes. That's the priority in OKC right now, but I would assume that the plan is for Sorber to eventually take over for Hartenstein. It might take a couple of years. We're talking about a guy that averaged 14.5 points, 8.5 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.5 steals, and 2 blocks per game last year. Showed some shooting touch, but really we're looking at this for the defensive stats and the solid passing for a big. 2.4 assists per game as a freshman in college as a center is very solid. What we like to see. More assists per game than we saw from Derek Queen last year, and Derek Queen's passing is something that is very noted. It's noted very often. And I think Sorber's also, that's not me trying to tear down Derek Queen in any sense. It's just saying I like Sorber. Think he's going to be very good. Might take a couple of seasons, though. So if you're able to be that patient, stash him. If the manager in your league that has him isn't willing to be that patient, maybe it's a good time to sell him on, hey, like, yeah, you drafted a good player. And eventually Thomas Sorber will be good for your team. But can you wait that long? I don't know, man. Your team's getting a little old. You might want to take this win now piece. And I know that Thomas Sorber is going to be better in a couple of years, and that's why I'm doing that. I'm trying to help you out. Just trying to do something like that to get Thomas Sorber onto your team. If you're able to stash him and be willing to wait, because there probably isn't going to be a ton of production during his rookie year, and there's a good chance that we don't see a ton from him in year 2. But long term, big believer in Thomas Sorber. The other rookie that fits this mold that I think we're going to, eventually see some really good production out of is Joan Beringer, who looks like we don't have a ton here on Data Baller to look at as far as his height and weight. But if you kept up with Summer League at all, then you know what we saw. We saw an incredible amount of shot blocking, especially that first game, watching him against Yves Missi and the Pelicans, seeing him swat a ton of shots. We see the vision. We saw the vision before the draft, but now we see the vision. Like, we can see it in front of us. They drafted him because Rudy Gobert is getting older. And now you can say, oh, he can learn a little bit. Watch Rudy Gobert, observe. He's still pretty new to basketball. He's very young. He's not 19 yet. So just seeing him get reps and seeing him learn how to play basketball from one of the best defensive players of all time, I think that this guy's going to be pretty good long term. So he's definitely worth stashing, but at the same time, probably not going to get a ton of run as a rookie for a team that's trying to make it further than they did the last 2 seasons, trying to make it past the conference finals into the NBA finals, have an aging team. They have Rudy Gobert. They have Naz Reid also to play center minutes. There may not be a ton of time for Beringer to be on the floor this year. Maybe more so during the regular season than during the playoffs, obviously. So he should get some time to develop, and Minnesota has had no problem playing their guys in the G League and allowing them to develop and get minutes, which is a good thing. I'm a proponent of the G League if you're using it the right way as a development system for your team, for them to players to get reps and be able to practice their role that they will play in the NBA, practice it in a game setting. I think that is a beneficial thing, but it might be a year or two before we see Beringer even part of the rotation. And that's okay. We're willing to wait because we know just how good this type of player can be in fantasy basketball, specifically in category leagues. But if he's blocking shots the way he did during summer league, might be a little bit more than just category league production we get out of him. He could be incredible in points leagues as well. All right. Now that was the rookies. We'll talk about some non-rookies now. Specifically, we're going to start with, and I don't remember, I think that we do have 2 Cavs on this list, but I don't think we'll go with them back to back. The first player I want to talk about is Jalen Tyson, who was drafted with the number 20 pick last summer. Didn't play a ton during his rookie year for the Cavs, averaged 3.6 points, 2 rebounds. But when he got the opportunity, we saw a couple of really solid games for him. We saw a start early in, I guess it was early in his rookie year, but in later part of November. 16 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, and a 3. Was the second night of a back-to-back after their first loss of the season to Boston. So I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, they rested pretty much all of their starters. So Jalen Tyson had a good game then, had one other start that he didn't do too much, and then started the last game of the season and played 46 minutes because it was the last game of the season. They already had the one seed locked up. 31 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, a block, and 4 threes. I thought Jalen Tyson also looked pretty good at Summer League this year. Averaged 19.7 points, 6 rebounds, 6.7 assists, 1.3 steals, 1.3 blocks, 2.7 threes. Like, did a lot of different things. Turned the ball over a good bit. Didn't shoot the ball super efficiently. And I remember watching one of his games. I think he had a pretty costly turnover late in the game, but he had been dominating the rest of the game. So not going to hold him to that in a Summer League setting. But I remember having that thought. I don't expect Jalen Tyson to now play a significant role off the bench for the Cavs as they try and take advantage of Boston and Indiana's injuries and Milwaukee getting weaker and try and have more success in the playoffs than they did after a historic regular season last year. So I'm not expecting Jalen Tyson to see a significant bump in minutes, but I still think he's a talented player. And within a couple of years, for him to at least be part of the rotation. And maybe as Cleveland, I doubt that they'll be able to keep this entire core 4 together for the next 8 years. Eventually, at some point, something's going to change, and we'll open up some minutes for Jalen Tyson, who should hopefully be ready at that point as a guy that turns 23 in November. Probably is ready to take on a larger role in the rotation this year, but still not significant enough for him to have a breakout season this year, I don't think. All right, the next player I want to talk about is another guy that looked really good during Summer League. That's Oso Ighodaro. I'm going to pull up here. Average 4.2 points, 3.6 rebounds, 1.2 assists per game. Also during his rookie year was the number 40 overall pick for the Suns. Second round guy. Oh, we got an ad. Thanks, NBA. I will download your app. I already have it. Just kidding. During Summer League, averaged 12.3 points, 8.5 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1.8 steals. Not really a shooter. Does not shoot the ball super well, but it was a fun experiment for them to put the ball in his hands and just see what he can do. And I loved it. There was definitely at least a handful of plays, or I guess like small flashes, where you're like seeing the vision of this 7-foot ball handler that can get to the rim, and you're like, oh, yeah, that could be a lot of fun and really, really good if this is the plan for him long term. Now, right now, they have Mark Williams. They just drafted Kamen Malawach. They have Nick Richards there still. So probably not a ton of minutes this year after he was able to play a good bit during his rookie year. Maybe he's able to see some backup 4 minutes, but it doesn't work out too well with him playing next to some of these guys because while we did see Malawat shoot a good bit during summer league, he's not a good shooter at this point. Even if we can, whether you believe in the vision or not, I would assume that the goal is for him to be at least a competent floor spacer, but Mark Williams and Nick Richards are not. So it kind of doesn't work super well for Iguodala to play alongside them. So I'm not sure exactly what his role looks like this year, but a talented player, and seems like the plan is for him to have the ball in his hands, which is really exciting for fantasy managers. All right, we're going to go back to Cleveland for the next one and talk about Craig Porter Jr., who I think has probably been considered a player worth stashing for a couple of years now. And we saw him play a smaller role this past season than we did the year before. Undrafted player when he came out. Let me see if I can get his draft year up. Undrafted in 2023. Only played 10.1 minutes per game last year after playing 12.7 minutes per game as a rookie. Averaged 3.7 points, 1.3 rebounds, 1.4 assists. Had only a couple games where he played big minutes. Some of them looked pretty good. He had 7 assists, 2 steal, 2 block game in November, that same one that Jalen Tyson had the big game against Boston. The game before that, he had 15 points. Let's see, a couple other double-digit scoring, played 43 minutes in that regular season finale, had 25 and 5 with 2 blocks and 4 threes. Hasn't been a great shooter, but had a couple games where he was able to knock down some shots this year and is a player that can get defensive stats. So there is a pathway for him to be a really good player in category leagues. He just hasn't really gotten the opportunity yet with Cleveland. Now, do I expect that to come this year? Maybe not. And that's okay. I'm still willing to wait on this type of player. I know the comparison that he got a good bit last year was to Derek White, who took a number of years before he was able to really pan out. We could see that happen with Craig Porter Jr., and it may not be with Cleveland. It may be with a different team, and that's okay. He's a talented player that I'm willing to wait on and that I think you should stash as well. And that he will eventually be a productive player in the NBA and a really good player in category fantasy leagues. Now, may not be quite as effective in points leagues. I think that'd be high-end outcomes for him to be really effective in points leagues. There's a clearer path for the category league value. He's not going to be a high volume scorer. I don't think he'll have that, but a decent source of assists. Maybe he's able to develop into a strong floor spacer, and I think that would really open things up for him. But the ability to get defensive stats, I think, is what makes him a little bit attractive as a player that's worth stashing. All right. Next up, we've got Tyler Smith to talk about from Milwaukee. So I'm going to go ahead and get his numbers up here. But a player that was a pretty highly ranked prospect and then did not play very well for G League Ignite, fell to the Bucks in the second round, but still a talented player. And we like to bet on talent. Only appeared in 23 games during his rookie year, 5.3 minutes per game. So it's really hard to go based off numbers. So we'll look at the 2 games that he actually played more than 10 minutes per game. And in both of those, he did play 27 and 30 minutes. So we're able to see that a little bit. Let's see here. In February, played 27 minutes, had 12, 7, 3, 2 with 3 threes. Poor shooting, but it was against OKC. And then he played the regular season finale, 20 points, 4 rebounds, 4 threes in 30 minutes with a steal and a block. Much better shooting night there. Will turn 21 in November. Again, like a talented prospect that just didn't get an opportunity in Milwaukee as a rookie. He's still in Milwaukee. That's not changing as of now. And I don't expect him to play a significant role this season. They, for some reason, appear committed to trying and make this thing work around Giannis. And yes, I get it. If you have Giannis, you try and win a championship. I agree. But I don't think this team is good enough to win the East in a weaker Eastern Conference. Of course, you always have a chance with Giannis. But the rest of the roster is not that great. Like Miles Turner is a really good center. And I think he fits really well next to Giannis. I like that. Having Bobby Portis off the bench is good. But when the rest of your lineup is Kyle Kuzma, Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr., Gary Harris, Torian Prince, Ryan Rollins, like Cole Anthony, I just don't see the vision. But I don't need to get on my rant. But my hope was that they would trade Giannis and then the door would open for Tyler Smith to take on more minutes and we could see what this guy's all about. I don't expect that to happen this year, and I don't expect Doc Rivers to all of a sudden feel really willing to give his young guys extra minutes. So it might take a little bit more time with Tyler Smith. Frankly, I don't think that it's out of the question that even if Giannis isn't traded this summer, that this question of whether or not he's going to stick around will get approached again at the trade deadline and then in next offseason and then the trade deadline after that until he leaves or is out of Milwaukee. I think that it's basically just going to keep getting approached every year. This isn't me saying, oh, he needs to go to the Knicks or the Lakers or the Bulls or Miami or like some other big market team because he doesn't need to be in Milwaukee, blah, blah, blah. This is, hey, man, like they're not building a contending team around you. Like that is not what is happening here. They don't have too many assets. Yes, signing Miles Turner was a huge W that saved face a lot because if you don't sign Miles Turner and he does what everyone expected and re-signs in Indiana, do they bring Brook Lopez back at that point? The guy who is now going to be the backup and for the Clippers. And then what is that? Is that roster like, is that good enough? I don't know. They were saved a little bit by the Miles Turner signing, but then they had to cut Dame, like just stretch and wave. Like that's pretty crazy that the amount of assets they have to give up to make all these moves. And then they're basically just giving up Chris Middleton and Damian Lillard. And now what does his team look like? So I'm not saying that from a sense of he needs to be out of Milwaukee because of the city. He just needs to be off the Bucks because I don't think that management has done a good enough job to build a contending team around him. And it probably makes sense for them to try and make some sort of trade that gets them their assets back or some sort of trade that gets them assets so they can start a slower rebuild. Because you can probably get an unprecedented amount of assets back for Giannis at this point, but can you for 33-year-old Giannis? You probably can for 31-year-old Giannis, but can you for 33-year-old Giannis? I don't know. Stash Tyler Smith. That's my my bottom line there that I need to reiterate. All right. All right. The next player we're going to talk about is Bobby Klintman, who averaged, basically nothing for Detroit last year. Played in 8 games, 5.3 minutes per game. The one time he played any legitimate role, it was game 82, played 23 minutes, averaged 15 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, 2 threes. Don't expect him to play much for Detroit this year. Just don't. Second round pick, 2024. Turns out we've actually been talking about a number of second round picks from 2024, and I think we have more on the way, so that's fun. I still think he's a talented player. Looked okay during summer league. Averaged 9 points, 7.2 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.2 steals, a block, a 3. There's definitely talent here and a good bit to like. But I'm just not expecting him to play much of a role for Detroit this year. He's 22, so he's not super, super young, but he's still a very young player and has time to figure things out. Potentially, not this upcoming season, but maybe the year after that, maybe 2 years after that. But we haven't gotten to see a ton of him at the NBA level. Hoping we continue to see more, maybe in small stretches here and there. I mean, he played 8 games, 5.3 minutes per game. Like, I would hope we get to see him a little bit more than that next year. But at this point, I think he's definitely worth stashing. The next player is a guy that hasn't made his NBA debut yet because he was hurt all of last season, but we did get to see him a little bit during Summer League, and that's Nikola Jurisic for Atlanta. And I can't even get his NBA.com page up quickly, so I'm not going to worry about it because he didn't play to register stats last year. 43rd overall pick in 2024. This summer, averaged 11.8 points, 3 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Didn't really shoot the 3 super well during Summer League, but was still able to score pretty decently, get a handful of defensive stats, play make okay. So there was some stuff to like from him over the summer. I think he was a really talented prospect and kind of considered a sleeper entering the 2024 draft. And then, unfortunately, we didn't get to see him play during his rookie year, but definitely a player that I still think is worth stashing at this point. Maybe not a tremendous amount of upside or even a clear path at this point to minutes, but talent wins out. He's 21 years old. Plenty of time to figure it out whether or not it's in Atlanta. But there's also no reason for them to not just continue to hold on to him. Maybe we get to see him in a limited role this year, but being able to play in more G League games this year, I think will be good for his development. The next player we'll talk about is another guy that looked good during Summer League. And his older brother is also, I think older brother. I would assume older brother. That sounds right. Cam Christie, who we got to see in a limited role as a rookie where he averaged, again, basically nothing, kind of like a couple of the other guys we've talked about. But he only played in 13 games at 4.5 minutes per game. Saw one game where he played more than 10 minutes. Not really much to base that off of. But this summer had a 21-point game, a 21-point game. Ended up averaging 16.2 points, 5 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 1.8 steals, 2.4 threes. 20 years old. He'll actually, you know what? Shout out. Today is his birthday. He just turned 20 years old today. Happy birthday, Cam Christie. I think that he's worth stashing in Dynasty Leagues as a potential 3-and-D beast. We saw him average, like I said, 1.8 steals, had 2 steals in every game except one. He only had 1 steal, was able to space the floor well, passed pretty well. I think was a pretty dynamic guard during Summer League. I think he's a guy that is absolutely worth stashing at this point, especially on a team that does not have much going for their future. This is a win now team with a lot of really old players and then some that are in their late 20s to early 30s, but not a ton that is very, very young. So there's a good bit to like about Cam Christie on a team that doesn't have much of a future on the team right now. The next player you probably have heard of, even if you are a very, very casual NBA fan, this guy named Bronny James. I think he's worth stashing, and I feel better about him than I did when he was drafted or than I did during his rookie year. I mean, there was definitely some moments during his rookie season where everyone was like, I mean, okay, he's out there. And like, there was like reports like, oh, he's going to be in the rotation. And it's like, is this just getting leaked just to get people to tune in for ratings to go up? Is that really what we're doing? But during Summer League, and again, going into Summer League, it was like, oh my gosh, the Bronny James versus Cooper flag show. And it's like, okay, like, really? Is that what we're here to see? And I thought Bronny looked good in that game and then looked even better over the next few games after that. The first 2 games of Summer League played a very limited role, didn't do too much. But over the course of 6 appearances, which, again, that includes a 10-minute and a 15-minute stint in his first 2 games, which was in the California Classic Summer League. Averaged 11.5 points, 2.3 rebounds, 2.7 assists, a steal, 1.3 threes. Over the last 3 games of Summer League, where he played 24, 24, and 28 minutes, averaged 16.3 points, 1.7 threes, 4.3 assists, 3 rebounds, a steal. He looked good. He looked very solid. Like a player that could maybe be a rotation player this year. He played 6.7 minutes per game this year, 27 games. I think we could definitely see more appearances and maybe closer to 10 minutes per game. My expectations for what he does this year are not very high. But I think that there's definitely a reason to have him in the rotation, maybe not every game, but to come in and be a guy that can defend on the ball and maybe do enough offensively as a playmaker or knock down a shot occasionally. Really, he'd be out there for his defense, but definitely a lot more to like than at this time last year. But I'm also seeing a little bit of a vision, seeing some growth, seeing some work ethic development and like quotes on it to the point where you're like, okay, he did take a nice step from year 1 to year 2. And that's what I'm expecting to show up when the regular season comes around as well. Maybe we can see more of that from year 2 to year 3, year 3 to year 4. When he was interviewed, I think it was pre-draft about players he wants to, I guess, play like, and he says Derek White. Maybe that's what this list is just going to be, a bunch of players that I think are going to be the next Derek White. I don't think he'll be as good as Derek White is right now, but maybe Derek White in San Antonio is like a real possibility, or Derek White's first year in Boston, because I know what we know about Derek White now is I don't think Bronny James is going to reach those levels. I don't think that that's unfair to say. But there's definitely more here than I think we thought at this time last year. He's a player that I think is worth stashing. Now, the unfortunate part about this is probably the person in your league that has Bronny is also the biggest LeBron James fan you've ever met and is going to refuse to give up Bronny James, and it's going to be very difficult to actually truly stash him. But if you have him already or he's sitting on your waiver wire, I think he's worth stashing. All right, one more guy I want to mention, and it's somebody I talked about at the beginning as a player you're probably not going to stash in your league that rosters 150 to 200 players. That's Jordan Walsh, who I really liked entering his draft. He was a 5-star prospect that didn't have a great season at Arkansas and hasn't really gotten to play much through his first 2 years in the NBA. And I expect him to play a little bit more this year. And honestly, maybe he is better fitting on yesterday's list as a sleeper, not a stash. Maybe you do need to act a little quicker on Jordan Walsh because of the Jason Tatum injury that would have him out for it potentially all of this year, at least most of it, bare minimum, like best case scenario, most of the season Jason Tatum misses. Jordan Walsh is a really good defensive prospect, and I think that could help him get on the floor this year, as Boston probably still looks to remain competitive, at least at first. But they also need to figure out what some of these young guys are and who they can be. Jordan Walsh played in 4 summer league games this year, averaged 15 points, 4 rebounds, 1.3 assists, a steal, and 1.8 threes. The shot was definitely a question mark for him coming out of college. So seeing him have a decent shooting summer league is pretty encouraging. Really, really talented player that just didn't play super well in college and hasn't gotten an opportunity on a team that has been consistently one of the best in the NBA through his first 2 years in the league. So maybe this is the year that he's able to carve out a role and prove that he deserves to be a rotation player in the NBA, at least, because then there's a lot more to like if he does. But that's going to do it for Dynasty stashes. That was 12 different players. You can pick your favorite 1 or 2 and stash them. Do not stash all 12 of these guys. That doesn't make sense. If you think that 10 of these guys suck and 2 of them are good, then just stash the 2. That's okay. I'm not going to get my feelings hurt that you disagree with me on 80% of this. Because if you like 2 of these guys, I think that they're worth stashing. Pick your favorite and stash them. Maybe you have 15 leagues because you're a sicko and you want to do 1 in each league. And then you still have some that you could do in 2 different leagues. Go for it. I don't recommend stashing all 12 in the same league. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Podcast. We will have a guest on tomorrow to talk about the 2025 rookie class and how they looked in Summer League, and maybe some other guys that look good in Summer League. Doesn't have to be rookies. We'll see. Should be fun. But you can like, comment, subscribe. Would appreciate all that. And follow me on Twitter at NoUrban22. And as always, feel free to ask me any Dynasty related questions on there. But that is going to do it. And I will see you guys tomorrow.